And welcome to Fourth and Inches, Arizona State Football Edition. I'm Jordan D'Souza, along with my co-host Nathaniel Smith and Christian Egerbide. But before we get into the game this weekend, Nathaniel, how was your weekend?
Pretty good. Pretty quality overall. Had my standard shift at Chick-fil-A on Saturday night. So missed the second half of the ASU game, unfortunately. Just kidding. We suck. But pretty good weekend. Sunday was great. Just kicked back, relaxed for most of the time. Watched some good football Saturday and Sunday. Hung out with the friends. So pretty standard weekend overall.
And it was Halloween, is that correct? Might I ask you what you dressed up as?
This year I was actually Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson is the main character from The Simpsons. For all of you who listening back home don't really know who that is. So it's a very good costume choice. You look very good, Nate. Christian, how about yourself?
This weekend was pretty eventful, pretty fun. I actually ventured by bus over to Tucson, Arizona, into enemy territory. I visited the University of Arizona, saw a few friends from high school there. So it was pretty cool. Got to hang out with them for the weekend and, dress up, have a good Halloween weekend. So no complaints at all. Came back on Sunday, hung out, watched some football. So overall, a really great weekend, of course.
Might I ask you what you dressed up as well?
I was an In-N-Out worker.
Ooh.
I was actually formerly employed there. So had my old In-N-Out shirt that I paired with one of those classic hats that they have at In-N-Out and some white pants. And just cooking up burgers. And it was a great time.
So you were kind of paying homage to your alma mater, is that safe to say?
Of course.
Very good. Gotta love it. I also had a very good weekend, got to see some friends, had a good time. I dressed up as a Care Bear, so I pretty much stole this blue Care Bear onesie from Target, only $20. Like, that's not a bargain, yeah, I don't even know what is. Other than that, it was a very good weekend. ASU didn't look too good, but still managed to have a good time. All right, now on to the contest, which took place on Saturday. It wasn't really much of a contest, more so a one-sided affair. Sun Devils fall 35-54 to the Oregon Ducks. That's a rough game going in. I mean, you expect to at least put up a decent fight against a team coming in with a 2-4 record. You don't expect them to rip off 734 yards on you. That's rough. Overall, I don't really think we even won one of the single offensive statistical categories. It's a rough game when your running back has a higher passer rating than your quarterback. Overall, a tough game. Nate, what were some of your takeaways from this game?
Well, just going into it, Oregon had lost 5 in a row. So just by hearing that stat alone, you like your chances going into the game. But, I mean, any educated football fan would most likely understand that despite Oregon losing 5 in a row, like they're still a talented ball club. They get pretty good recruits, used to be one of the powerhouses in the Pac-12. I don't think they can be considered that anymore. But, I mean, just heading into the game, Oregon definitely has a reputation offensively of always being able to put up points and move the ball. So takeaways from this game are pretty simple. Our defense is almost record-setting poor. We gave up 734 yards of total offense. I cannot find too many scenarios where you're going to win a ball game doing that. So, we need to tighten up the defense for sure. 408, almost 500 through the air alone. Offensively, we actually didn't look terrible. We gained almost 500 yards of total offense ourselves. But on the other side of the ball, if we're giving up that many yards, it doesn't even matter. Sterling Cole got the start at quarterback this game, and he did not play very well. Yes, he did finish with 302 yards, but only 1 touchdown and 3 picks. He is young, true freshman, but, I mean, you can't expect to win turning the ball over 3 times. So turnovers and poor defense are my takeaways.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not really a big analytics guy, but if you just look at this game, the Ducks, they did a lot of things right, and then you look on our side of the ball, we did not do as many things right as they did right, and that's just a recipe for disaster, if you ask me, or pretty much anyone who knows football. Christian, what were some of your takeaways from the game?
Well, yeah, just as Nate said, I mean, our offense didn't look, too bad outside of the turnovers. They moved the ball pretty well, but when you give up over 700 yards of offense to the other team, I don't care how good your offense is, you're not going to have much chance to win. And we actually hung pretty well in the first quarter and into the second quarter, hanging in there within a touchdown of them, and then they just pulled away as the game went on. Their offense was just too explosive, or rather our defense is probably just too poor to hang with them. So once again, we talk about it every week. The defense has just got to get better if ASU wants to start winning these games against these Pac-12 opponents, because the Pac-12 is a power conference. There are so many explosive offensive teams in the Pac-12. So to win games, you really have to have at least a serviceable defense, and we just have a very below average defense at the moment, and it's losing us games.
And now we're just going to look at the quarterback position, which has been a cause for concern for Arizona State in past years. So we start off with Manny Wilkins. He doesn't do really good. We have Brady White. He does sort of good, then he gets hurt. And then we got this guy, Dylan Sterling Cole, who also doesn't really do that good. Nate, do you think that next year going forward, we're going to have one of these three guys as our starters, or do you think we're going to have to go elsewhere to find a quarterback?
Well, unfortunately, realistically speaking, one of those three guys will probably be the starter, because very rare scenario is it to start a true freshman and actually be confident in his ability, especially at a school like Arizona State, where we don't get the best quarterback recruits for obvious reasons. But just breaking down stats from what we've seen so far this year, this season, Wilkins has a 60% completion percentage, which actually isn't that bad. That's actually pretty good. It's probably his best stat. Here's the concerning part. He's only thrown for 6 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions, and he's been sacked 17 times. That's not all his fault. Obviously, the offensive line plays a part in that, but the 6-to-5 touchdown to interception ratio is just not good. He's only thrown for 1,400 yards. He's not really a downfield passer. He's more of an athlete that just happens to play quarterback. And when that's the case, your offense is extremely limited. And then you look at the other option, which is Sterling Cole. This year, he's only attempted 55 passes for almost 400 yards. His completion percentage is significantly worse. It's only 50%. That is not good. He has 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions. And he's been sacked 4 times. So, he is a true freshman, so the interceptions, that makes sense. With young quarterbacks, they often throw interceptions. But with the good young quarterbacks, you will see a decent amount of interceptions, but at least the touchdowns will match or be higher. But when there's such a disparity between the two, between 1 and 4, that's just a great cause for concern. And so next year, Todd Graham and the staff are going to have a very tough decision. If it was me, I think you got to start Brady White going into next year, because even though we've seen the least amount of work from him, from what we did see, he looked the best to me out of these 3.
Do you think that going into next year we'd be best fit trying to bring in a new quarterback recruit and maybe start him, maybe someone to transfer from another school?
Yeah, that's not a bad course of action at all. If it was me, I'd really focus on recruiting a pocket-type passer, which is what Sterling Cole was supposed to be. Obviously, that's not panning out very well thus far. But yeah, if we could get an older transfer or even a true freshman, I think would have a good chance at succeeding as these guys, because Wilkins and Sterling Cole are not getting the job done.
So you say pretty much we should go and outsource a new quarterback. Outsourcing is generally frowned upon in society. So you're all for outsourcing. Is that safe to say?
What do you mean by outsourcing?
Just going outside your corporation to get other people for jobs?
Oh. Well, if the guy's inside your corporation...
So is it safe to say you're for outsourcing, just to get that on public record?
In this scenario...
So that's a yes from Nate Smith. So now, Christian, looking on the defensive side, everyone knows what Oregon's all about. They're a great offensive team, not so much on the defensive side of the ball. What do you think we could do defensively to try to, in the future, to try to really just tighten up on that side of the ball?
Well, it's almost the same thing as Nate said. We don't get the premier quarterback recruits. We also don't get, the premier defensive recruits when you look at, our DBs or our linebackers. you don't see ASU and think, yeah, that's a defensive powerhouse where I want to go play and succeed. Especially not if you watch a game at home as a high school kid and a big recruit and you see, oh, they gave up 730 yards. I want to go play there if I'm on defense. You definitely don't say that. So I think just, the culture needs to change, and they need to become more defensive minded and not be okay with, all right, we know it's going to be a shootout. Let's try to put up, 55 points so we can win 55 to 54. I think it's a mindset that you need to have, that you need to be running around like some bad dudes on defense and lock it down. So I think it's in large part that we don't get the best defensive recruits. So our secondary is really weak. 489 pass yards is never good. And then also, that opens up the run game for holes. So just overall on the defensive side, it's really, really tough to watch ASU play right now because just nothing is going right for them. They can't find a way to stop anyone.
Yeah, being an ex-defensive player yourself, that must be pretty tough to watch.
Yeah, no, bad defensive football is never, it's entertaining, but it's just almost cringeworthy because you think to yourself, wow, you got to score 45 points or you have no hope of winning this game.
See, I'm going to go back to something that you previously said, which is very interesting. You said that there has to be a culture change. And a lot of the time, the culture for a football team, it is established through the coaching staff and, more importantly, the head coach. And you guys were saying we really don't get as many good recruits as the other schools in the Pac-12 do. Do you blame Todd Graham and the coaching staff for a lot of what's happened this year and the past year?
Well, yeah, because, you saw that he had a few 10-win seasons, 2 or 3 years ago. So, as a head coach, a lot in college of what you do is centered around recruiting and trying to get the best dudes. And, with Arizona State, they're here towards, the west coast of the United States. They should be, pretty in touch with these California big name schools that have some of the best players in the country coming out of them. So I think just Todd Graham, from a recruiting standpoint, just needs to do better at, trying to make ASU an appealing option. And it's so hard because the Pac-12 has so many schools that are appealing for football players to go to. It's such a storied conference. There's so many options to go to. You need to find a way to separate ASU from the Pac. And, the way to do it is not, having these shootouts where your defense is giving up, nearly 800 yards. And, even the games we've won, some of the games we've won have been 51 to 41 or along those lines. That's not how you build a winning team in college. I think, look at what Alabama does and how they win consistently. That defense is always full of dogs, and they always have consistently one of the best defenses in the nation. So, the old saying, defense wins championships, I think that's really one of the truer things said about football. So I think that's where it starts, is the defense and the culture of, we don't want to just win games by shootouts and then lose games, 54 to 35. We want to tighten it up and, start to change how the entire program is run.
Nate, I'm going to ask you a similar question. How much do you blame the coaching staff and Todd Graham for what's been happening with Arizona State the last year?
A lot. I think the blame is almost entirely on them, actually. So much in college football, or football in general, is based on coaching. You see it time and time again. The best teams always have the best coaches, and that's never a mistake. Oftentimes, great coaches will take less talented teams and put them in better positions. You look at a school like Washington, okay? They're currently undefeated, sitting at number 5 in the playoff rankings, and you cannot sit here and tell me that Washington has the best talent or the 4th most talent out of the entire nation, because that's just not true. Even in the Pac-12 alone, they're like a middle-of-the-road school for recruiting. People are going to choose USC, UCLA, Oregon over them every day of the week. And so that just, to me right there, within our own conference, proves that, their defense has been absolutely dominant this year. And I really do not believe that, just on a strictly talent level, they're that much better than us. I just think the coaching there, the culture there, the attitude there is just so much different than what it is here. A big part of defense isn't even talent-based. Defense is mostly effort and intelligence. And when you can combine those two things, you start to have some sort of swagger around your team and confidence in knowing that you can run around and stop teams from gaining 700 yards on you. So, there needs to be a culture change. I do think the head coach and coaching staff is at a pretty big fault for this because, even if we had a bunch of scrubs, which we don't, we have some talented players, there's no way we should be giving up this many yards on defense.
All right, and looking ahead to not next week, but in 2 weeks, we have number 16th ranked Utah. They're 7-2 this year, coming off a tough loss against Washington. Nate, do you give us any chance to upset the Utes?
Okay, so last week I believe I said that we had little to no chance to beat Oregon, and going into that game, they had lost 5 in a row. This week, we play 16th ranked Utah, who nearly upset the University of Washington last week. If it wasn't for a late punt return, they may have won the game or at least forced it into overtime. So, to put it bluntly, no. We have little to zero chance. I would feel extremely comfortable betting every cent to my name on this game that we lose because I just don't see it happening. No. We won't win.
And how many cents is that exactly? Because I will take that bet. That's a lot of cents.
Well, in the ballpark of $80,000.
Okay, I'm not much of a gambling man, but I love me a good upset. So we'll talk about that later, definitely. Christian, do you give us any chance against Utah?
I believe in the any given Sunday philosophy, or I guess any given Saturday in this instance.
It's actually the game's going to be on Thursday, so
any given Thursday.
Third strike, you're out.
But anytime you step on the field, you have a chance to win. But Utah is an offensive juggernaut. They're coming in off a loss to Washington, probably a little heated about that. Want to get back to their winning ways. So I do think this will be a tough game for us to win. I don't give us much shot, but I do give us a shot. But, yeah, the way our defense has been playing, I just don't see us stopping this Utah team. And because of that, I really don't trust our offense to be able to put up 50 points and keep us in the game.
Yeah, definitely. It's not looking good for us next week, especially we don't even know what quarterback's going to be starting. We don't know if Wilkins is still hurt. Then we might be going in with a true freshman. So it's not looking good for ASU. Hopefully they'll be able to stay within 20 this time. But for 4th and Inches Arizona State edition, I'm Jordan D'Souza.
I'm Nate Smith.
And I'm Christian Agabita.
Thanks for stopping by.